The purple dusk of twilight time steals across the meadows of my heart. High up in the sky, the little stars twine, always reminding me that we're apart. You wander down the lane and far away, leaving me a song that will not die. Love is now the stardust of yesterday, the music of the years gone by. Sometimes I wonder why I spend the lonely nights dreaming of a song. The melody haunts my reverie, and I am once again with you when our love was new, and each kiss had inspiration. But that was long ago. Now my consolation is in the stardust of a song beside the garden wall, where stars are bright. You are in my arms. The nightingale sings his fairy tale of paradise where roses bloom. Though I dream in vain, in my heart you will remain, my stardust melody, the memory of dreams gone by.
That's true. It really doesn't matter if we're ready because time waits for no man. Time waits for no show. Time doesn't even wait for three guys.
I have a Tom Waits album.
You do?
Yeah.
Tom waits for no man. I always wondered, I think one of my buddies from back in the day brought this up, maybe Les or somebody, but is Tom Waits a real name? Tom Waits,
yes.
Or Philip Glass, Philip Glass,
Yeah. His last album is going to be called Tom Gets It.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Bolton.
Michael Bolton,
like
he's
what?
He just made that
he's
up,
got
right?
it right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, welcome you guys. Yeah, this is episode 9 now, right?
9.
Yes.
Confirm that for me, please.
Inside the Sulphurbath.
Inside the Sulphurbath, episode 9. Yeah, I want to thank everybody that's been on the show so far. Thank all the great guests we've had on the past 8 episodes. Tonight is episode 9.
Guests.
It's been a whole panel. One of these days, I think maybe episode 25, we should put a party together. In fact, this is the first section of the invite. When we reach episode 25, we'll have a big party, and every guest and every host that's ever been on the show will come together, and we'll do a whole live show just of the what do you call that? The 25 centennial episode.
The bash.
A sesquicentennial.
A sesquinskin Sulphurbath.
That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
Episode.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it works. So that'll be really cool. But right now we're on episode 9. It's been really great.
Yeah.
So what's up tonight? Blaine Kneece, Brandon White.
That's me.
Joining me tonight.
This is Brandon. Yeah.
And I'm Mike Wilson.
He's Mike Wilson.
Yeah, welcome to Inside the Sulphurbath, episode 9. So what's up with you guys this week? Brandon, you haven't joined us in a while, but you're back.
I'm here. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
I've seen the past couple of shows. I, in particular, watched the Green Screen show and enjoyed it very much.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That was fun.
So, it's congratulations to you, Mike, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. We want to have you back often. And, thanks for mentioning last week's show was really great. It was episode 8, and our guests that week were Justin Petropoulos and Paradise Club. And we set the studio up like a big green screen factory. It was really something special.
Yeah. Yeah, just like tonight. What's on tap?
Tonight's great. We have actually 3 segments tonight with guests, and I'm really pleased to have all 3 of the guests that we have tonight. The first guest we have is author Kavitha Rajagopalan, and Kavitha is going to join us in a couple minutes, and she's going to come out and have a discussion segment with us. After that, we're going to have John Koch come out. John is a filmmaker and a good friend of the Sulphurbath, and he's going to show some clips and share some stuff with us. And then the band Streets of Laredo are going to perform live and discuss their music with us. I think it's going to be awesome. We have great lineup tonight.
Yeah. Perfect
lineup.
So
it feels cheesy to say that.
No, but
I've watched that on TV so many times. Like,
believe it, I know
we got
it.
a great lineup.
Yeah.
Oh, tonight, everybody, I just want to say tonight, this show is going to be a real doozy.
A doozy of an episode. This will be actually probably the first doozy we've had. It's the first show with 3 guests, right? And it's the first show with this arrangement, Blaine, Brandon, Mike.
Yeah,
just knockout punches all night.
Yeah, the BBM combination. And yeah, it's really good to cover the different things too. So
we'll be giving away tickets to Supertramp later.
yeah, right, that would be great.
Yeah. So stay tuned. Be the ninth caller episode.
Exclusive audio slave video tonight on tonight's show.
Yeah. That'll be your mic is hot. Your mic, Brandon, your mic is hot. So
Yeah.
just to let you know, the
I
audio
get very
slave.
excited about audio
At home,
slave.
it came into people like audio slave.
Yes.
Is there any other way?
Yeah. So also, what's interesting that
so
the folks at
much.
home won't recognize is that outside of our window, there's a band and like a concert going on, right? There's a patio outside the window, and there's like a whole band and people playing and DJing out there, and nobody can hear.
It's not very good.
Yeah. So
Well, what was
we
the,
gotta
what
top
was
it.
the do we want to talk about the intro, the video?
Yeah.
Oh
that
yeah,
we
there was that
watched?
intro video. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
want to talk about that. That was the weekly intro video that Sulphurbath produces. So I made that up on the roof last night actually with some good friends, Greg and Daniel, and we put that together with another friend that is actually going to be a guest on next week's show.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really great. His name is Cleve Douglas. Right.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure his last name. But yeah, Cleve hung out with us last night. It was really great. He's going to be on next week's show, so anybody tuning in should definitely see next week's too. But we put that together. He's a jazz singer, and he improvised with us to make a little experimental video. We also got some footage of Greg and Dan playing. I just edited something cool together like that, and I think it turned out pretty cool. So
It's great. When I saw it, I was just like, that's so interesting. And then he said, he's got a band next week. You know,
yeah, it's almost like the preview for next week's show, right?
It's great.
This is the first time we kind of did that,
It's
but
great,
we were all
man.
hanging on the
Really-
roof, like
really
what to
looking
do.
forward to it.
Yeah, he's got
gonna be
years in the industry, and he's got a huge songbook, and so that the making of that video was Dan doing a couple tracks on guitar and Greg doing a couple tracks on drums. Later editing that together with what Cleve did, but we asked Cleve, what song do you want? Is there some song in your career that's like one of your favorites that you want to do? Yeah. And so he did Stardust, and that song is just amazing, and the way he did it, but how it came out in the editing, how we changed it, and what we added to it, it was pretty interesting. So
He also really likes popcorn.
yeah, he really dug the popcorn.
We hung out
that
with
made,
him
yeah.
last night, and
That was this
we
thing.
made a huge fucking thing of popcorn, and
Yeah.
he was just like the whole time, he was just like, fucking
yeah,
popcorn.
he's
Oh
all
my
about
god,
that
it was
popcorn,
great.
yeah.
I've never I liked popcorn like twice as much because he liked popcorn
Yeah.
that much. It sealed the deal.
Yeah, thanks to Miho for that one. The popcorn last night was great.
Thank
It
you.
was
Yay.
phenomenal, huh?
And they did. He worked on a jazz album with Fumio, who is kind of the house band leader for Sulphurbath, if we have such a thing. But Fumio was on this album. They did some Duke Ellington songs, and they were playing some of that last night. It was really amazing. And so to go from that and then up onto the roof and to have him collaborate with us on one of our videos, I just thought it was super cool and the way it came out in editing. And I hope he liked it, and I hope he's watching tonight. And hi, Cleve. So
See you next week.
see you next week. Cool. So yeah, tonight we're gonna introduce our first guest in a second here. We're really pleased to have everybody tonight. We're gonna maybe push things along a little bit quicker because we have 3 guests.
Yeah.
But thanks everybody for joining, and I would like to invite Kavitha out. Yeah, thank you. Woo.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Hi,
Great to be
Kavitha.
here.
Yeah, how are
Hi.
you?
I'm good. Hi, everyone out there in TV land.
Yeah, they're with us tonight, and I hope they're strong.
Let's hope.
It's a strong audience tonight. So how are you? I'm so pleased to have you on the show tonight. First of all, I should set the scene a little bit for really for us and everybody at home. I met you through Sean Randall, who is the editor at the Mantle.
Yeah.
And I've read a ton of articles on the Mantle. It's really great. It's mantlethought.org, right? And so working with Sean, and he's shared in the experiences here and inside the Sulphurbath, bringing different people that we can interview and do segments of. When he suggested you, he sent me a couple things, and so I saw your book that you're a published writer, you're a sociologist, And you're, I hope, going to spread some knowledge on us here inside the Sulphurbath tonight.
That would be my pleasure. And thanks also, shout out to Sean. Mantle is a tremendous platform, and if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to do so. Really, really a visionary lens for progressive thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going there weekly now. It's since we started, it was really serendipity to meet Sean right when we did it inside the Sulphurbath. We started at just the right time with this idea, and he came around and started sharing in the idea and like what we could possibly do. So we want to be progressive, and we want to talk about a lot of issues. We want to share art. We were talking earlier about how we have talked and mentioned before the idea of economic globalization versus cultural globalization.
Absolutely.
Certainly working with Fumio and Miho and the different people just living here in New York City, all the different collaborators that are from all around the world, sharing great ideas. And so, we want to talk about that a little bit. And then, meeting Sean, and I think he was right on to the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so, but also I should mention you were on one of our flyers before that you couldn't make it once before, so we're glad to have you this time.
Yeah, my apologies for that. I twisted my ankle.
Right.
Hey.
But I didn't twist my brain, so
right. Exactly.
Not any more than it was before.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about your history and what leads up to you writing this book? Talk to us about your book and then what other projects you're working on right now.
Absolutely. So originally I started out as a journalist, and I had the good fortune of working as a journalist in my hometown, in my father's hometown, in southern India for about a year. And I was specializing at that time in sort of social reporting and in features. And I think part of what fascinated me about that is the sheer disconnect between the stories on the ground and how people were living their lives and the larger policy debates that were happening. Of course, in India, most of the policy debates are just, political catfights, but there was a lot of kind of global conversation about what development should be and what the World Bank was investing in, and then you would go to the actual slums or to where all of these communities were. And I think also just for me, having grown up in a diasporic community, I had a very, very narrow lens of what it meant to be Indian. And I think going back to India and seeing just how complicated and how complex that society was, it really taught me that the most powerful tool that we have in understanding our world is storytelling, really, and understanding how people make sense of love and loss and desire and rage and all of these things, and how they then connect themselves to other people through these experiences, and what that means for the broader body politic, as it were. And I think around the time that I started working on this, I started thinking a little bit about what I wanted to do, and I had the good fortune of having a Fulbright fellowship in Berlin at the time, and I was there originally to sort of study, the Turkish political identity, and what I started to see there were all of these communities within the Turkish within this Turkish community that was speaking on behalf of its people. And I started to see how representative politics was so complicated and also just so wrong-headed in so many ways. And I thought it was terribly interesting to see how, you have this group of people who are speaking on behalf of people, they have their own oppressed people within them. And that kind of opened my mind to the true diversity, not only within the Turkish community, but within the Muslim community. And of course, I decided I was going to write a book about just the complexity of Muslim identity in the world. And I was going to try and do it through storytelling, these very simple, accessible, primarily love stories, because everybody can get down on a love story, right? Mm-hmm. And so I showed up basically on September 4th, 2001, to start my graduate degree, in which I was going to inform myself about things. And a week later, Twin Towers, everything blows up, everyone hates the Muslims. It was a complicated time. All of these policy changes were happening in real time. I was actually doing reporting in the Pakistani, I didn't have my third community at the time. I was doing reporting in the Pakistani communities in Brooklyn, literally as mass deportations were rolling out, as families were being ripped to shreds, as women were just kind of being left behind without papers, without the language, without any kind of documentation, trying to navigate their way through it. And so the book came out, and I think, it was probably a little bit broader and more kind of, abstract than it really could have been to land. And I think the conversation, unfortunately, by the time that the book came out, I think the conversation was so fraught that I think ultimately they were asking me to either sell America on Muslims or sell America against Muslims. And you and I both know the truth is so much more complex than that. So I think that opened me up to this world of, just immigrant communities in these large cities. And so now, to kind of close the loop, to respond to your question, I've been working a lot on kind of urban issues on these global cities around the world in which, migration is a real factor. In southern India, you have migrant workers from northern India who are treated essentially as we treat Mexicans on the border, just outsiders. You have people who are from this country who are Indian nationals and Indian citizens who are being brought in buses as migrant workers and are living in like corrugated metal shacks.
Yes, first to do difficult
sites.
jobs and to be exploited, and also first to be blamed for criminality in the area,
Yeah.
and like having to come into
They're
a loaded
selling the
situation.
drugs now, whatever.
Yeah.
So I've been looking a lot at that. I have been looking a lot at kind of water and how urban development in the name of preserving water and managing water has been displacing communities and in fact actually displacing water in most communities around the world. Major, large-scale, global city ready. It's all about this market, this thing that you were talking about, cultural globalism. These cities want to bid to be a part of the world class, the global class. And so they want to have luxury condos and shopping districts and all of these things, but those require, very thick foundations to be dropped into the riverbeds, and that is not great water management policy, right? So,
and it's also usually contractors and people that have their own agenda.
Their own agenda.
Yeah. And which is, that's seems to be a theme that runs a lot in the discussions we have here, is the agenda of those that are trying to develop their world for more profit versus the agenda of those that are trying to develop the world for more freedom, for less borders,
And freedom is a complicated thing. So right now I'm working, Sean and I are colleagues at the World Policy Institute, which is a progressive think tank based here in New York. And ultimately what we try to do through World Policy Institute is not think about policy as foreign policy or domestic policy, but as global policy and world policy. And so we've been looking at this issue of urbanism and trying to understand how the lessons and how kind of the gray economy and off-the-books entrepreneurs in cities around the world are kind of innovating to solve urban problems that are facing them, how those stories and those behaviors can be applied to developing shrinking cities in the Rust Belt like Detroit or, certain parts of northern Germany where they have 60-year-old people taking care of 80-year-old parents and all the kids are gone or have become neo-Nazis,
Wow, yeah.
So you have these two problems. So, it's all very broad, but I think it's a part of the same kind of progression of thought, which is that, we have these insider and outsider narratives and who belongs. And, I think this city is where these questions really come into sharp focus. At some point in the next 20 years, 75% of the world's population is going to live in cities. And whether those cities are shrinking or whether they're overburdened and incapable of sustaining the people who live there.
That always gets me, because just walking around and using the public transport and such, here in New York City, the trains alone, the subway is 100 years old. How do you go through and, update that and make it usable for the population that's exploding as we're looking at it?
And how long has it taken them to construct the Second Avenue line?
Yeah.
Leave alone all of the hospital shutdowns and the public schools that are being shut down. There are real issues here with governance and capacity and incorporating people.
And can you talk a little bit more about referencing the narrative story inside New York City specifically, like the experiences of immigrants that come to this city? I think a lot of people don't know, might be watching. I'm from California. I'm from LA. And I grew up kind of a suburb life in California. So moving to New York to me was kind of a big deal to really see how a metropolis works. Because even LA is a huge population, but it's all sprawling and it's all cars. And moving to New York was kind of a big lesson to me of how people can live all so tightly together.
Yeah.
And then you throw in the population and the immigration statistics. Yeah. So can you talk about that a little bit more, about how you're talking about finding these stories and the narratives that aren't told in these kind of communities? as far as New York City locally and.
I mean, I think what's so fascinating about New York is, that you can, in the course of one subway ride, literally migrate through 12 different countries, and you can see these borders and their physical borders. So is this what integration looks like? Is this what it looks like? Everyone just kind of in their own 5-block radius with their own language and their own shops. I remember living in Berlin in my early 20s, and I'm dating myself a little bit here, but in my early 20s, I remember this was before Berlin became the national capital, and this was allegedly a world-class city. And they had no other languages in their public announcements. All the subway ads were in German. And you show up in New York, you have a legal right in any major service or government institution to ask for an interpreter who speaks your language. Whether it's, Mandarin Chinese or Fujianese or Cantonese, they will do whatever they can to provide you with someone, if they have the capacity. Now, there are shortfalls in that. There are certain violations to that standard. But what I think is so fascinating about New York is that, it's not necessarily, integration or, we are all one, we are all New Yorkers, so much as kind of coexistence, neutral coexistence. But I'll tell you, maybe a year after 9/11, I went to the Pakistan Day Parade in Coney Island Avenue, and I saw all of these kids with green, like bandanas and do-rags and Celtics jerseys, because the colors of Pakistan are green and white. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, now this is immigration. Mm-hmm. This is a bunch of kids in baggy jeans and Celtics jerseys saying, I'm Pakistani and I'm a New Yorker. Mm-hmm. And as a result, this is what it looks like. And I think
But Boston fans?
But Boston fans?
Jeez.
I mean,
But you bring up another point, all the parades that happen here. That was something I didn't know that happened when I moved to New York.
The
is that there's
parades?
different Puerto Rican Day Parade and the Caribbean Parade.
There's the Everybody Day Parade.
Yeah. And I think that's really great because there's this celebration of it, and it is coming together. But at the same time, the reverse of that is I do see that there still is this segregation, that there still is... whether it's schools, communities, different areas.
I get the feeling, though, there's almost like a celebration of the segregation. And that's what those parades are. Mm-hmm. It's a celebration of our local version of the identity as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And native New Yorkers can be extremely provincial about things. They can be like, oh yeah, well, those are those Armenians. But they know who you are. They'll know that this person is Albanian, this person is Armenian, this person... But they also don't... they may not necessarily have any interest in going and walking the High Line or, I think there's just this concept of the urban village that takes place in New York, where you are only safe in this vast urban metropolis if you have known borders. And you know that all the people in that border are your people and they are watching your back. And if you do something stupid, then your mom's going to hear about it, So I think there's something about that in the history of New York, and that's changing now. Because we have people like us who are willing to move to these, old school neighborhoods and create new ways of living. And I think what's so challenging in all of this, effort to resurge some of these cities or to recover or the governor of Michigan uses the word resurrect a lot in Ray Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
And that's corny. But, he's basically saying he wants to brand manage this recovery of Detroit. And they even had been discussing for a little bit of time, they were going to have hipster visas, basically, to get underemployed, highly educated hipsters from cities like LA and New York, basically to get them to go back and urban farm or, make artisanal foods or something, in Detroit. Which, never mind the fact that Detroit is surrounded by fertile farmland. You don't need urban farms in Michigan.
Yeah.
I was going to say sign us up. Do they have internet connection there? We can still do the show from Detroit. Get us a farm and just,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't know that. That's really
it's been
crazy.
some interesting stuff. I mean, people are talking about some really interesting things, but I think what's so interesting about this is you have a bunch of people who've been left behind after all of these people who have fled, who've said, this place is going to the dogs, it's done, I'm moving on. And then you have a group of people who are here. So who can integrate with these people? How can we create an economy that is made up of the survivors?
Right.
and, new blood, basically. And I think that's very writ large in the experience of Bushwick, or any of the surrounding neighborhoods where, integration is challenging. We don't necessarily all use the same resources.
It's the exact same thing in New Orleans right now. Like, on one hand, like, I moved up here from New Orleans a couple of years ago, and it's so weird because on the one hand, you have the people who've been there forever, and they want to actually have an economy because it's literally just tourism and restaurants. That's pretty much the only way anybody makes any money there. And but at the same time, they're kind of, it's like this trade-off because on one hand, if you get all these new people in, like part of the original
what is culture?
They're worried about it getting stripped away.
They're trying to retain that too, but then you find these big fast food chains are what's retaining that instead of people, the people that knew that and lived that life in the 70s or whenever it was, have long moved out or are running that fast food joint because that's the job in town.
Yeah. It's tricky.
And I mean, in a certain way, we were talking about this earlier. We were talking about how so much of America looks the same now, and everybody has, the CVS and the Walmart and the Lowe's, and regardless of whether you're in Missouri or in Duluth or, in Hickory, North Carolina, where I'm from, they all just look the same, and all of those little characteristics and those features are gone. But what I think you're talking about with New Orleans is New Orleans has really, through tremendous adversity, retained a very particular local character. And even places like Cape Cod, I mean, you go to Cape Cod, there's no chains there. So how do you retain that and still welcome in, development and job creation and all of these things? Biggest challenges that we in America have, which ultimately are the challenges that any city will have around the world.
Right. But if there's any trend that we can see happening in what we're looking at now in cities like Detroit, we can expect that we need to get to the bottom of some of those answers pretty soon.
Yeah. I mean, the one big thing to really bear in mind is that there is no kind of top-down solution. There's no answer to this. I mean, there are cities in Europe where they've been like, oh, you know what, we'll just build a stadium or a monorail and everyone will show up. And that doesn't work. There has to be some kind of magic that causes people to show up. I mean, if you talk about what a city is, it's space and, multi-purpose space, and there's, infrastructure. There's all of these ways that people define the city. But really, it's the people. It's lots of people crowded in together and kind of rubbing up on each other and doing things together and having to deal with each other on the subway at 7 in the morning, It's just this peopleness of it. And I think when you start looking at places like China, obviously has a pretty radical strategy of creating something like 200 cities within 20 years. And I went to some of these cities, and all of these cities were supposed to be maybe 1 million people, around 1 million people. And they said, what are the necessary preconditions for a city to really function? You need to have housing, you need to have transport, you need to have jobs, and you need to have educational institutions so that people aren't just, indentured servants to whatever. So then they created these malls, and there would be a factory, and there's a university, and there's, all these apartment complexes, and there's parkland, and then there's all of these subways. And I went to these satellite cities, and there is no space left in Shanghai. It's full of people, but all the people are there. No one is in these satellite cities. They're just half empty. I mean, I don't know if this is the case now, but this was a couple of years ago.
Do they have to occur on some organic level? You know what I mean? Like,
in China,
can they not just
make people move there?
Make like a fabricated version of a city and be like, listen, it's got all you want.
A prefab
Why don't you come?
city.
Why don't you just come to this? Why don't you flock to this center? So
Like
it just doesn't
Celebration
occur that
Florida.
way.
It's weird, right? Like, that becomes
there it
weird.
is.
That becomes weird. Like, you become your borderline Stalin. You're saying, oh, we're going to relocate you here, and you're all going to integrate. you know?
Yeah.
We're going to force you to migrate. We're going to put you on a train. You're going to end up in, like, the Caucasus or whatever.
Hurry
you
up
know?
and integrate.
You're gonna want
Right?
this.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's odd.
So I think it becomes, but I mean, I think the New York experiment is funny. There is this kind of New Yorkness, but underneath it is this separateness, And I don't know that that's going to continue into the next generation of New York with people like us, who are, from the outside. But I've now lived in New York for, 13 years, 12 years. So, my daughter was born here. She's going to be a New Yorker, and what that means to her is she's going to meet a bunch of, creative class people and thinkers who are from the outside and who see other cities and who have lived in other cities, and they're not going to be oppressed immigrants who were brought here for no other reason. They're not survivors of the Great Migration or the colonization of Puerto Rico. These are people who chose their way into this city.
Wow, that's profound, and it's their city. Look at the history of New York.
Yeah.
So, and can you tell us a little bit? I want to ask you about any other projects you're working on now, but can you tell us a little bit more about the stories in your novel, in your book? Can you tell me? Is it a novel?
It's so funny. I think literary nonfiction invites basically two kinds of people. Frustrated journalists and frustrated fiction writers. And I think I think I'm the frustrated fiction writer. And every time I think I'm going to write a novel, I just end up writing nonfiction because the stories that I encounter in this world are just ridiculous and too unbelievable to pass up. And I think there's some real profundity in the truth. And this is a tangent, but I want to tell you this because I think there's a woman that I know that I think at some point she would be an interesting person for you guys to meet. But she is a founder of this independent press here, and she is Afghan by descent. And she's been working on this nonfiction book for a little while, basically about her family's exodus from Afghanistan over the past 2 generations. And she started it as a novel, because the act of novel writing is so freeing. Fiction writing is so freeing. You can just, feel things, and you can explore the inner lives of people in a very real way. And then one of her friends said, "This is such a compelling story, though. You really should do it as nonfiction." And as we spoke, she said to me, "But in the Muslim world, people believe all kinds of things that aren't true, like visitations and, ghosts, and there are people who come and give prophecy, and there's all kinds of things that aren't true." And I was like, who's to say that's not true, and what is true and what's not true? I mean, to the person that's telling you that they were visited by their dead grandfather who told them to avoid this road and take this other road, that is a really powerful piece of truth. So you might as well talk about it in that way, So, to your point. So, yes, it's a nonfiction book, but I did not spend a whole lot of time, scouring almanacs to fact check. Like if somebody said it was a rainy day and it felt like a rainy day in their heart, I let it be a rainy day.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying I was too, I was a little bit weak. I did look at a couple of almanacs, but I'm just not that hardcore. So, so I was like, oh, this is my little nod to subjective reality.
Well, I was gonna say there's something to be said
Rashomon,
about that for subjective reality, and it's like share with me your vision. So should I taint your vision with what I think you should be telling me, or But that's great. And so what is the process? What is your process for writing? Do you collect the? Is it all written by you, or are you culminating things?
No, I write it all. I mean, I'm working on another book now. I don't know, what the timeline is. I wish I could give you more of an answer, but this kind of responds to your question about what I'm doing. I sit on the board of the only organization in America that helps women leave forced and arranged marriages, which kind of helps us beg the question of what does it mean to be arranged. I mean, really, TamilMatrimony.com or Shadi.com, I don't know if any of you know what this is, but there are, we have Match.com and OkCupid and what have you, but Indians have marriage websites where, you can say whether you think that your prospective spouse should be a homebody or should be a vegetarian or, should have a certain complexion or all of these things. And so I tell you, I say, like, how different is that if that's the future of arranged marriage? How much coercion is involved in that versus, self-selecting on eHarmony or what have you, So, I don't know. It's an interesting world. I think at this point we're kind of navigating the waters a little bit, and we're trying to figure out what kind of advocacy to do. But I think it's a really, really interesting question, the fact that there is arranged marriage in so many communities in the United States. And whenever people talk about forced marriage, it's, oh, those poor Pakistani girls, or, oh, those poor East African girls who are underage and they're being forced into submission and all of these things. But I mean, there's something about our immigration policy today where we have, these American citizen women who, the minute they turn 18 and are officially U.S. citizens, are sent back to their homelands and married off to people and told, you have to consummate this marriage within the next couple of weeks or we will kill you because you're bringing dishonor on our families. I mean, that shit is happening. That's happening now. That's happening to New Yorkers, to New York girls like me who are brassy and have read a lot of Foucault, and that's happening. There's also all of these stories, these ways that cultures are changing. I mean, in India, when I was growing up, I was born and raised in the United States, but we went back to India. There was no greater commodity, if I want to say it, than your wife and your children. Those were an extension of who you were. That was how you lived in the world. And now you have people basically saying, oh, this person is infertile, so you have to give your child to this person. So we're going to, it's called, there's a word for it, transnational abduction or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
You have women who are basically in arranged marriages, but there's an element of choice in this, who are being married here to men from overseas, and then when they have children, they're saying, oh, like I've spoken to a couple of women in recent months where this has happened. They will say, the family members will start saying, well, your child is actually our child because we brought you here and we paid for all this stuff, and like we now are setting you up. And they'll basically say, okay, well, why don't we all just go back to India for a visit and leave the mother of these children behind and bring...
Oh, my goodness.
This is happening now. So this is the next book. And I think the stories that'll come out of that will be like, it's basically my whole goal is to say this could be you. This is not something that happens... the Balkans is not something that happens to foreigners. Genocide is not so far away. Being abducted is not so far away, So that's kind of, I think, the objective of storytelling for me, is to say that this could happen to you, and how would you feel?
And that's excellent. We've covered that on past shows too, talking to certain people about, being able to share that voice, being able to have that story, and how progressive that is. That's, of course, the first step. Not only hearing the stories and getting involved that way by just getting the history of it, but when you're living in a place like here in New York City, it really is like you're living this. You're hearing the story, but we're living that as well because it's right next door to us. It's our neighbors. It's our whole community that we're seeing. And some of the problems that you're talking about, that you've mentioned, aren't even the worst problems that we have to deal with in this sense. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt this, but I just mentioned there's the band that we talked about playing outdoors just started playing a little bit louder now, right?
Yeah.
Earlier, I don't know who was it like
rocking out.
earlier, but now it's like Janis Joplin is
It is a
suddenly.
little Joplin.
It's
Yeah. Anyway, I don't think the folks at home can hear that, but if it's distracting in the room, I just wanted to mention that. There's like a Janis Joplin.
Feel a little groovy.
If you can't, you're lucky.
Right. I need like some Jack Daniels passed to me real quick.
Everybody get aviator
SoCo,
shades all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good example also of New York City. There's so much stuff happening. It's all happening right on top of the other thing that's happening. And in my building alone, there's 70 people in my building. And I live in an artistic community, and there's a lot of artists and musicians that are playing, and things like this happen. But in any block that you pick in New York, another thing that's always fascinated me, you can see that that's stacking up of like families from everywhere in the world, families dealing with all kinds of different situations. And then right on top of, just like the poverty in New York, that's just right on top of the elegance and the Ritz in New York. And, I think there's that modern version, that idea of New York that you're hustling, you're always working, but we forget that, behind closed doors, all the arguments and discussions and the stuff that people are really dealing with in this city, it's like,
It's weird when you think about that, specifically being in New York. It's just like the richest people on earth live within 3 miles of me.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It's
Isn't that
really crazy.
wild?
And I'm just making it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just the way it is physically, the way it's laid out, is just so insane. There's so many
there's
disparate
literally
communities.
somebody like a couple miles from you who made like $40 million last week.
Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah. It's amazing. And it's just you can walk there. You can walk and see where they live. And these people are just so, the communities are so divided. It's like such a sharp, it's like blocks. It's really like a couple, and it's just a complete different shift. When you live next to a different community, it's interesting because there's like a tight knit communities between everyone culturally, and then when you're right on the rift, you can feel like a slight friction where you live, and you're just like, but you get to peek in, and you get to see how the other people live.
Yeah, you don't get that in every city. Yeah,
you forget
special,
that because I grew up in like a white suburban community with no cultural outside influences. I move here. I'm here for 10 years. It's like culture shock. And then I go back and I just see the same onslaught of different cultures to the suburb where I used to live.
Mm-hmm.
And like they're like, guys, we got a Thai restaurant. I'm like, oh my god, that's so great!
And
like,
it's like
good for you.
So I feel like okay. So I was doing some research. Yeah,
I recommend it.
Everyone,
Like,
for everyone.
You know, just
right?
start
It's in the
there.
heartland
That's
now.
a starting point.
Yeah.
I mean, spaghetti. We made up spaghetti. We made up what was it? Chow fun. We made up, I think.
Right.
Or lo mein, I think, is not actually a thing in any other country but America. So, what I think is so fascinating is actually most research says that most new immigration and diversity is in the suburbs and in the heartland. So I drove once. I was doing some research on like immigrant communities in the Midwest, and I drove on these highways through like Missouri into Iowa, and it's like you pass these vast tracts of farmland, you know, with these crazy machines that look like alien crustaceans. They're just sitting in the middle of it's weird, right? And you'll pass by this giant inflated strawberry, and there's no music. The radio is all like Christian talk radio, and it's just crazy. And then you pull up in these little gas stations, and the only people that are working there are like Eritreans and like Hmong, you know? Yeah. And then I passed through this one town in southern Missouri, right on the Iowa border, and the American Legion had been turned into a Mexican supermarket.
Oh, wow.
I mean, wild. Like they painted it saffron orange, and it was like Lupita International, you know, delicacies or something. And I'm like, this is... So we talk about immigration and immigrant communities in America, but like the real shit is happening in the suburb. Like if you want to get any decent kind of Indian food or, you know, dim sum in the DC area, you have to go to Alexandria and to Rockville, because that's where all the food is.
That's where it's at.
You know, that's where it's at. Because you can, if you're a poor immigrant, you can buy up a whole strip mall, and that's all your people will show up and buy clothes and all of these things. But still, what I think is interesting in the urban experience, and I think this is not the case in the suburban immigrant experience, is the embedding. So I was living in this neighborhood in like southern Brooklyn, near Midwood for a while, and everybody's like, oh yeah, that's where the Pakistanis are at. But it's not actually the Pakistanis. It's also the Bangladeshis, and within that, the Nepalis, and within that, the Tibetans. I mean, there's like a huge Tibetan community there that nobody talks about. So I think this is what's so interesting. So to go back to the Berlin analogy, there's this kind of like edited seeing that we do when we look around and we see certain communities, we see what we expect to see. So in German, the words for foreigner, Muslim, and Turk are interchangeable. And so you'd go around in these certain neighborhoods in Berlin and you'd see, they'd be like, oh, well, that's where the Turks are. You know, oh, it's Turks up in there, you know. And then you'd actually see a bunch of Palestinians. And Arabs and Turks are wildly different, you know. And then you'd see a bunch of, the Indians are over there, but you'd actually see a bunch of Sri Lankans. Sri Lankans are quite different from Indians, you know. And then you'd see, like in the traditional Vietnamese neighborhoods, there'd be certain kinds of Chinese people. So there's embedding that happens. And what I think is so interesting, this happens in our city like crazy. Uptown Washington Heights, everybody says, oh, well, that's the Dominicans. It used to be a Cuban neighborhood. The Dominicans embedded there. And then the Mexicans from Puebla started embedding there. Like they started just hooking themselves in. And this is just, I think, the story of any kind of complex city. You know, you've got an existing neighborhood and people feel this kind of kinship, you know, people who maybe have all kinds of rage and hostility for each other back home, who would never have anything to do with each other, like suddenly end up here. So the Haitian neighborhood borders the Jamaican neighborhood. And I have, you know, dear Haitian friends who grew up here and said, you know, they used to have this social pressure to try and pass as Jamaican. And the Trinidadians and the Haitians would all try and pass as Jamaican because that was the hegemonic identity in that neighborhood. So I just think, you know, this all comes down to represent who is speaking on behalf of whom. You know, when we elect a local representative, we say, oh, well, we're really speaking about the people and they're speaking on behalf of the people, but they're speaking on behalf of people who are speaking on behalf of like 5 or 6 other sets of people, you know. So, I mean, how far do you want to take it? This is where all of that cultural relativism of, the early 90s started falling apart. Like, how far do you want to divide things and divide identity groups, or how far do you actually want to just allow people to form allegiances and to say, you know what, I'm cool with these Poles over here, and I'm cool with these Puerto Ricans.
Mm-hmm.
And am I allowed as an Indian, I live in a predominantly Puerto Rican neighborhood, am I allowed as an Indian to say, well, as us Puerto Ricans say, like, am I allowed to claim that identity, At what point am I allowed to claim that identity?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it goes back to our earlier conversation about Benedict Anderson's watershed book, Imagined Communities, and what it means to have your own personal imagination, but also curated imagination. Like there's this kind of curatorial process where the world tells you who you're allowed to be a part of and who you're not allowed. Like, I got to tell you, when Barack Obama was elected, like the feeling that I had was like, that dude is me, like he's this immigrant, he's all mixed with people, like he is, a nerd, this is my people. But am I really like a half Kenyan, half Iowan or Ohioan person who grew up in Hawaii? Like, where does that sense of allegiance come into play? And now with the drone strikes and the deportations and all of these other things that in the Guantanamo and the hunger strikes that I feel personal pain about, am I allowed to feel disappointed because I, uninvited, chose to have an emotional allegiance with this person?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do I have like an affinity with someone who has different goals and ideals just because I had a shared experience with them? I know what it's like to be that person, but we just happen to have different goals and identity different.
And I think that's a powerful thing. I think it's a super powerful thing to have somebody who is representative of the more complicated immigrant brown story here in the White House, who is politically different than I would be. I think that's a great thing that happens.
Yeah, but almost internally, there's a sense of almost betrayal. You're like, should I really want to be behind this person because I shared that identity with them on a certain level. You know what I mean? Like, I can't help.
But is it any
feeling
greater than the betrayal that I felt with Clinton over the Balkans, or Rwanda?
No.
I mean, that betrayal, I think we have to sort of start sussing that out a little bit. Like, is it because I believed in my head, probably inaccurately, that Obama was my people? Is that betrayal any different than the betrayal that, any person in a representative government? Do these people really have a responsibility to speak for us? Should government look different? And I realize I'm going a little
That's going to be a whole other
onto a
segment.
tangent,
No,
yeah.
you're going straight into something that we sit and talk around. In
Yeah.
a representative government, is government really representative?
Yeah.
I mean, and that does get into a whole
Can we
other
all
thing.
be our
but-
own representative? I mean, that's insane.
Mhm.
Or is it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of new ways of discussing society that are happening right now with new technologies, from the internet to all the weird stuff that's happening in the sciences, biomedicine, nanotechnology.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird people suggesting right now, hey, we could make society like this.
Yeah.
And, we might be that generation that kind of sees all of society, or is that what we're witnessing right now? How controlled is that? And, I think all of our discussions that we have in these segments are always really kind of about that same topic there's a lot of resource in that, whether we're talking about economic resource or the resource of information is even more valuable. And are those resources in our new world and with our new technologies going to be split up and shared a little bit more,
Yeah.
can I say fairly,
And who is the people, and what is freedom? And, these are quite, it sounds like we're being abstract. It sounds like we're getting at, like, overly theoretical issues. But I think these are the crux of it all. What is freedom? Who is the people? What does it mean to belong? Until we figure those things out, I don't think we really understand what it means to govern or what governance should be. And I think it's really, really critical, at least at this level, that we start this conversation and then perhaps, change the way that policy making happens.
Exactly. Yeah. Excellent. Well, in the last minute here, is there something else you're working on now, or something that you can cue the people at home into, that they can go check out a website or?
I
Can
mean,
we
the
drop
two
some on
big,
them?
yeah, the two big projects that I'm working on right now was, this Emergent Cities project that's housed at World Policy Institute. We should have the webpage up and running shortly, but I'll send you. We actually just did a Google Hangout. It's all very cool and hip.
Nice.
But we did a little conversation about that project. And Unchained at Last, which is this organization that helps women leave forced marriages. But I'll tell you, my big project, I think that's probably going to come together within the next year, is just about what pluralism should be, and whether just because it's a necessary endpoint. And by pluralism, Mike had actually asked me to explain this a little bit, what exactly I meant. But pluralism in the sociological sense means diversity of multivalent societies, and societies in which you have a diversity of linguistic, religious, cultural, and socioeconomic groups all in the same space, and that need to be served by the same government, and need to be a part of the same institutions. So is pluralism, which is ultimately an endpoint, it's a natural endpoint in a world in which the migration rates are what they are. Is that a source of strength or a source of weakness to societies? And what do we mean by strength? Do we mean, economic growth,
Strength
or
and
what?
experience, or pragmatically, or exactly.
And if we want it to be a source of strength, which I don't believe it is, how do we approach that? And so I'll, stay tuned. I'm going to tell you guys about what's happening with that. That's
Very cool.
happening shortly.
And just pointing out the value of narrative and stories. And I think that's super valuable. And the more that we can share that throughout the world, instead of just sharing, oh, what did your media tell you? Are we up on the same page about why we're fighting?
What are your stats about why people hate each other?
Right.
If that's gonna... Anyway, I just want to thank you guys so much for having me on.
Kavitha, thank you so much. It was really great.
Yeah.
Kavitha Rajagopalan, and we're gonna put up on the archive. We'll have the webpage and the reference to the book and everything.
That's
so
great. Thank
awesome.
You so much.
Thank you. Kavitha, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Awesome. So double extra credit to Kavitha for keeping it cool during Janis Joplin right outside the window.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, well done.
Blaring. So again, thank you, Kavitha. That was really great.
At least we get to learn the bass player's name.
Yeah, right. I didn't hear. I was trying to tune it out, but that was really great. That feels great. So that's one thing we should point out that I don't know if we point out on every episode is what Inside the Sulphurbath really started as was a true mixture, a true balance of talking and taking on sometimes what can be difficult discussion, progressive issues, problems that are happening in the world, and different perspectives and different voices of people that can present those problems to us. Here, we're sitting obviously in an audio-video studio, and we hang out here, we talk, we have drinks, and we hang. Yeah. But for so many years, we've just been sitting here talking and having these great conversations. It's like we had this great enlightening conversation. This is amazing. 5 minutes later, we're jamming and somebody's got a bongo,
Just in general, and I've always looked forward to this every week, is just like, oh, who do we get to talk to? Who do we get to hear? There's just a voice that's not heard.
Exactly.
And I really appreciate
being
able to hear people from different sides. Like, I would never have talked to you in general.
Exactly,
like, how would this occur? Who would get to hear you? Just anybody can get to hear this.
But that's nothing like what we were talking about. It's kind of like this what happens in New York City is that you do, if you take that extra second, get that time to do that. I don't know if I could say that about LA, driving in between my job and my home. Here in New York City, whether it's the subway or waiting in line for a hot dog or whatever, like, you meet everybody in the world here. If you take that second, you do share stories here in a city like this. And I think that has a lot to do with transportation, everybody living together in a metropolis instead of spread out, and everybody trying to have their own thing themselves. And cities are really efficient that way too, right? We're sharing energy and
the feeling on certain levels that you're forced to be together.
Yeah.
In some aspects, and then there's just like friction, and then there's the learning between cultural norms. You're like, oh, they do this, they do that. I get it, and then you work together. Like there's a sense of that you're part of a larger whole.
Right.
It's funny because that's embedded into you. You're like, oh yeah, you're this year. Like, we're all New Yorkers, right? Like, I know. You know what I mean? You reach yourself on a specific lower level where you can connect.
What cultural parade is the one that you attend every year? What's your favorite? Do you have one that's like?
Oh, my inside group?
Yeah.
Oh man, Romanians.
Yeah.
They're insane.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Like I say, Eastern European blood.
No, I don't see that. That's my problem. Just like generally. Why is it a problem? But I'm just like a basic white guy from the suburbs. Like, I have no Milan.
St. Patrick's Day parade?
I might be German or Irish. There's some mix. But like, I don't have a cultural identity. I just have like suburban white
Blink 182 Day Parade.
That's me. That's
Yeah.
my peeps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's them.
Just,
Oh,
just
God.
a whole caravan of minivans trudging
Yeah,
along, blasting Blink
exactly.
182.
Some van
Exactly.
shoes.
Filled with skateboards in the
Yeah,
back.
basically it's the role of observer.
Mhm.
Basically, like it's just like I'm just watching what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you do that.
Well, no, that's the best. I bike around Brooklyn a lot, and one of the things I came across one summer, they have the, I'll probably get it wrong, but it's the San Gennaro Festival.
Oh yeah,
And-
Mulberry.
Oh man, they build this big statue. I don't know if
Yeah,
New
if you
Yorkers
ever go
don't
to
know
the
about
church,
this.
Do you go to
What?
the church at the end of the Mulberry? The
Yes.
San Gennaro? Yeah.
Yes. And I was just like stumbling across them, like, what are these people doing?
Yeah.
And I just got there just the right time. They're basically like the 100 strongest men on the block, and like get them, and then they build this huge statue, and it has Mary, and it's all like very ornate, and it must weigh a ton. It's in Brooklyn somewhere, yeah, like close to.
Oh, you don't go to the one on Mulberry in Manhattan?
No, the one I saw was here in Brooklyn, and it was like people
Oh,
like
it's awesome.
literally like this huge statue, and it was like 100 people getting under it, all lifting at the same
Yeah,
time.
I've seen those.
They would
before.
dance it around.
Yeah.
And I was really amazed at that. But those kind of things happen in New York City. It's really cool. And because they happen, because the transport and the way the city is designed,
Yeah.
you can walk and stumble across that. You can be on your bike and stumble across that. And whether it's been, street performers or some festival like that, or just like some weird opening of a beer garden,
Yeah.
you just walk. Basically, you don't have to plan your days in New York. You just start walking, and
Yeah.
then.
It's amazing what you'll find. It's just like festivals like that or things that you see. Like I remember one of the earliest memories I ever had, like those like memories you had. They're just like the formative.
Yeah.
Like you're just like this is like firmware.
Yeah.
In my brain,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like I'm just like whoa, this is like bass. This is I remember going to like a midnight mass on the shore. The Jersey Shore. Then we went to a church, and my family's not religious at all. We don't go to churches. We don't do any of that stuff, But I remember we were in the company of someone who does, so you do the nice thing and you go with, So we went with, and it was midnight mass, and I just remember I was so young that it was surreal as an experience to witness because I was like, this is so different, and there was like everyone was getting a paper cup, like a little with wax, like a wax paper cup, and they were getting a candle in it and lit it at the church, and there were like hundreds of people, and I was like, what is this? Everything's insane. And then we walked to the beach, and then I looked out on the water, and there was like a thing floating there with a large statue where there were like candles all over it, and people would go in and then put their candle down in the wax cup, and it would just float out into the ocean. And I remember this specifically as a memory, not as like a fantasy or a dream or anything. Like I remember this occurred, and it was just crazy. And just like I had been an outsider in that situation where I'd seen that whole subsect of like religion and that group. I'm like, I'm not you guys, but I'm so glad I got to see this.
Right.
Yeah. Scared me off of it.
Right. I'm just
For
here to see
good.
the Granion run, basically. And,
Yeah, maybe that's what I saw.
Right.
I don't know. Left a bad taste in my mouth.
Oh man, don't eat Granion. you gotta wait. Okay. So yeah, cool. So what's up next? We're gonna have our second segment. I think it'd be good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if people at home get the groovy soundtrack of tonight's show, but
Yeah.
we should probably stop mentioning it, right?
So you're chilling. I'm enjoying.
Yeah, that's dead air. We didn't want to hear that.
you royalties.
So cool. I would like to bring out our friend John Koch now. John is a
Yeah.
filmmaker and a good friend of the Sulphurbath. He's going to come out and we're going to discuss some filmmaking stuff with him, and also we're going to be able to see some of his projects he's working on. So cool. Welcome, John. John, you want to come out?
Yes.
Welcome. Filmmaker John Koch. How you doing tonight, man?
Doing good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty well. Pretty well. You've been sitting on the sidelines watching the build-up of the show, and we're on to segment 2 now.
Yep.
How's the band? Is that distracting you too much?
A little bit. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's
And
kind of easy to tune it out.
Yeah,
it is. I think we have to do a better job of like talking right into the mics while they're playing, just to make sure.
I think if I were
Folks at home.
down there, I would be tuning it out as well.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So cool. What's up? How have you been? It's been a while since I've talked to you. I know you before you were working on your project Stalemate.
That's right.
So I'd like to ask you about that and what's the state of that, and to see if you're working on anything new now.
Sure, yeah. Well, Stalemate started out as a web series, as you know, and we have since gradually transitioned it into a feature film. So that came about because we found as though the project was something that was a little bit more contemplative, a little more slower paced, but most importantly, it had quite a bit of subtlety that was going on in terms of the way it was edited and filmed. There were little things that you had to pick up on to really get the meaning of it.
Right.
And we just, through feedback from my colleagues, I'm a member of the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective, so we screened the film, or an episode or two of the film there, and they were thinking, this would be a better piece to sit down and focus on in a theater, or to concentrate on, rather than something that I would just be watching on the web randomly. So, and that kind of opened it up a little bit more. So I shot a few more scenes after that, after we decided that. And so right now it's currently in post-production, editing phase.
Very cool. Look forward to seeing it filmed fully. So what I have seen of it before, I actually helped you doing some audio on one of the segments before, and I've seen a few of the when they were webisodes. I saw some of those, and just seeing, you and I have talked a lot about our favorite directors and subtleties and symbology in filmmaking, and certain things, and I've always admired your opinion on filmmaking, and I can see something like this coming together into being a new project, becoming a feature. And like you say, based on the idea that there's some subtleties that happen in it that could be noticed maybe a little bit more if people have the time to sit down and watch the whole thing as a feature. Do you find that changed any of the writing involved, or do you think it was an easy transition?
Yeah, I think it was more of a transition of delivery, of figuring out what the final destination was going to be for this work, because I don't think it changed very much from the way it was written. But there are elements within it, like, say, sound, for instance, where I'm working a lot with sound that's not synchronized with the image, so it's sound that's appearing off camera. And those are the kinds of things where if the viewer doesn't have a strong visual cue to go along with something, they need to be focusing on it. So that was an example of something that caused that decision. But the transition, I think, was really more about how is this work going to engage with other people, and how is it best presented. And
can you set up Stalemate a little bit for us? We actually have a clip of it we're going to show, and then we have some slides that we're going to run through. Can you set up the clip that we're going to show, and maybe we can go to that in a bit? I would also like to know about the gear side of it. I'm curious about the camera you used and how you did your audio and stuff.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the audio, or just the technical side of things. So it's all shot on DSLR. It's all very DIY. So just using everything that I have on hand. And recorded with the boom and zoom method. So, very, kind of just lo-fi. But I think that I'm really happy with the results. I use a Canon 5D Mark II, but I have all fixed Nikkor lenses on it that were from an old, actually my first 35mm camera. I just love those lenses so much that I've kept them. And I'm kind of thrilled that I've been able to keep them.
And you had to throw an adapter on there. And
just an adapter ring, and that's it. So the main one I use is just a 50 f1.4. That is, I've always been so happy with the images from it that I just haven't let it go. So.
Cool. And you say pretty low fi, but like I definitely think it's excellent looking footage. The first time I saw the dailies, I was pretty amazed. The contrast looks great. The Stalemate's black and white project, and it looks really amazing. I was really amazed at how high quality the resolution was. What about the process with your actors? You work with 3 different actresses that represent the main character in that, right?
Right. Well, the piece is about a woman who is a filmmaker, and she's working on her first feature project, and it's very layered in terms of narrative because it's a story within a story within a story. And that unfolds as the film goes along. You start to understand that a little bit more. But the character is someone who's sort of losing her grip on reality. She is going through a lot of stress in her life with personal problems, and having this project going at the same time is just becoming too much to bear, and little by little she's sort of falling apart. And we're seeing that in her work and through observing her in her daily life. So, yes, there are 3 different actresses portraying her. The character is Julia. I was inspired by, as we discussed, the early Twilight Zone episodes, the first couple of seasons of the Twilight Zone, where it's sort of these metaphysical, ontological crises that people go through. But it's sort of what the film, or what the piece is about, by and large, is that it's an understanding of, or trying to grasp an understanding of how do we know things and what do we really know and what can we say that we really know in the end. So things in her life are changing before her, and she's having to interpret that. But it's meant to engage the viewer in that thought process as well.
And I think the cinematography lends itself to that kind of psychological aspect of it as well. Just the way everything, the way the contrast is on everything, and at first appearance, it seems like very, kind of creamy to me. But you look closer, and you get the grain of the black and white, and you see the characters stand out a little bit more. And yeah, it feels pretty moody to me, just from the very beginning, just something about the setting and everything.
How do you, in terms of storytelling, how do you tell the audience, because not many people are used to seeing a film where multiple actors play the same character.
Right.
So how do you make the jump to let the audience know this is the same character? Because visually, you're watching a film, and all of a sudden, one character is played by another. You're just like, what is going on? That's got to be a difficult leap to take, storytelling-wise.
Yeah, well, you see the same types of situations being played out with all three, actually, sets of actresses. So you'll see an argument within a relationship happen, and then the camera pulls back, and you see that it's being filmed. So something like that.
So you duplicate the scene for the audience to let them know.
In a sense, it's more of the dynamic within the scene, but not verbatim.
No, yeah, exactly. But for the audience, they're watching. They go, "Oh, I just saw this, but in a different way, and distance through a different filter of a different medium."
Right.
And so that lets them know, "Oh, that's interesting. That's great."
Do you want to, John, set up the clip we're about to watch at all specifically anymore?
Sure. Yeah. So the clip we're going to see here is what it represents is what it was previously episode 1, and I think you're going to see it in a format here where it's still formatted as the webisode. So this is the first scene of the film. And what's happening here is that you're witnessing Julia coming home after buying some groceries, and you get a little glimpse of inside her psychological state.
Great, excellent.
And I would just advise people to pay attention to the audio track.
Pay attention to the audio track?
Yeah.
Great.
Just turn off your air conditioner or something if you got noise in the background.
A lot of people on computers watching us. Yeah, now's a good time. Turn up your volume and pay attention. On. We're putting a clip on from John Koch's film, Stalemate.
Clive? Clive? What are you doing here?
What am I doing here? What are you doing here, Julia? What are you doing in my apartment? Why do you still have these? And who's at the door? What's going on?
I was there.
You were there.
Yes, there.
Where?
There
Anybody's home, please open the door.
was an accident.
Hello.
I mean, a man,
We're just asking all the neighbors if they've seen anything.
A man
Accident over here yesterday.
was hit by a car, by a bus, by a car and then by a bus. There was an accident, and
anything you can say would be really, really helpful for the investigation. Anything like that
Clive?
really good. Any cooperation with you or neighbors or anybody that's doing anything would really help us like you do so much. So we thank you.
Yeah.
Clive.
Give me a call to do that. Okay, we'll be in touch.
What's going on?
Oh, anybody home?
Julia, are you alright?
I'm alright.
So that was Stalemate, what was originally the first webisode of Stalemate, and is now being turned into a feature film.
Yes.
Very cool. So what did we see there? Who were the actors that were in that?
So we have, in that episode, it was Sarah Doe Osborne as Julia, and Billy Fry as Clive. So, and then there was someone outside the door, of course, but that was my roommate, pretending to be a police officer. So, all of the acting talent was just phenomenal. I was so thrilled with all the performances. So I just want to give a big shout out to them because they were fantastic.
The day I was on set with you, I was really amazed. Yeah, they were really
So we had Sarah Doe Osborne and Billy Fry, but also Katerina Morgado and Nadia Kyatkina, some of the principal players involved. So.
Cool. And as we ask you a couple of the questions about your process and methodology, we're going to flip through some slides of your some still images of the project of Stalemate. So we're going to start showing those now. So this is going to be shown right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, this was all shot here in Brooklyn, right?
No, actually, it was shot kind of all over. The scene that you were involved with which was episode 2, which is what we're seeing on the slide here now. That was shot in Brooklyn as well as this street scene here. There was a gallery scene which is coming up here in a moment that was shot in Chelsea. And then some of it was also shot in Washington Heights, in and around my neighborhood where I live.
Yeah, we just went from the restaurant scene, and this is also a clip, I think, from the restaurant scene walking away.
So this, yes.
And can you describe the scene a little bit? So this was the character's Julia, right? She was kind of going through this nostalgic series of events that she had shared in this relationship, and he was kind of unaffected as she was going through it, right?
Right. What you're seeing in that scene is just she is sort of going through a laundry list of memories, and he is. You can see him disengaging from the relationship. You can see him falling out of it, and she's totally oblivious to it. She's just saying, "Oh, remember this time when we did this and we had fun, and wasn't this fun when we did this, and so on and so on." And he's just thinking, "I've got to get out of here. This is terrible, and I don't know what's happening to her, and she's not the person I used to know."
Yeah, you can see that happening in his eyes, in the character. You're really feeling for him. That's such a tense scene, the tension between them. And you also mentioned the clip that we saw. Can you talk about the audio for that?
Yes, so a lot of the dramatic tension, the attention behind it was to have the tension build by something that's not happening on screen. So it was just somebody knocking on the door. We don't know who, we don't know why, but we'll find that out later. So she has come home from what seems to be just a typical grocery run, but obviously something else has happened along the way. So we'll find that out at a later point.
And you shot this in many different interior locations as well. This was a lot of different apartments around the city and such, right?
Yes. So this is Nadia here. She was fantastic.
Yeah, just the stills look amazing. It looks like a quality photograph, the contrast and everything.
Yeah.
I love it. And
I always appreciate that when you can watch a film and feel like you can pull a specific frame and have that stand alone.
Yeah.
You know, that's when you know, you're just like, wow, that looks really good. You can just pull any specific one. You know it's just well done.
Thank you.
And what's the still we're seeing here?
This is a point where we're discovering where Nadia is the real Julia, the fundamental, real life version of Julia. And that's the point where she's on her computer and she's hearing and seeing things within the footage that we're not sure are really there. And she's thinking that there's some sort of a plot against her by her actors. And so she's repeatedly going through a certain scene to hear what she thinks she's hearing, which are actually just voices in her head.
Interesting, sort of a paranoiac filmmaker, and she's like reassembling this project, but she's pulling from kind of a chaotic pattern of her own life.
Yeah. So I guess, what I'm going for with this project is just, I wanted to be open to things as they happened and to open to changes. And so, like I said, I started it as a web series, but I was open to turning it into something else. And I think that sort of represents a way that I work, or have worked up until this point at least, is a sort of more adventitious form of filmmaking rather than consciously planning out every single detail and executing those details.
Right.
I think that filmmaking needs to be a balance of that type of thinking of observing things and letting things happen, and the more formative elements of planning things out and having things go exactly as you want them to go.
Yeah, like I said, letting things happen and being open to watching what's happening around you as you're forming this project.
Yeah.
There might be some things that slip between the cracks, but there might be some things you didn't notice before.
Yeah.
And staying open to being able to adapt to a project like that. I think it's really cool. I look forward to seeing the entire feature and seeing it all woven together. Do you have a release date or any kind of screening or anything premiere planned as far as that?
Well, it's going to be submitted to festivals as per usual, so
cool.
It'll probably be sometime next year.
Cool.
At this point, and then from there I'll put it online on some sort of on-demand website.
Cool. Well, we'd like to see it. When we put the archive up, we'll put the website, and we want to be able to make sure that people can see it.
Is there a place I can go to see more or different or more other thing? Is there a total?
Yeah, there's quite a number of things I'm working on right now besides this, but you can go to John C. Koch, that's KOCH.com, and it's got links to a lot of different videos that I've been working on.
Okay, so. John C. Koch, KOCH, JohnCCook.com.
Yep.
That's very cool. So we look forward to being able to see all that stuff that's on there. Can you also tell us a little bit about the cooperative that you're involved with? It's what is it again? The Brooklyn.
Oh, it's called the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a group of people working in film that get together weekly to discuss works in progress.
Cool.
So we all give each other feedback and support in various ways. So, it ranges from giving specific creative feedback on a project to production support as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a big listserv where people
sounds like a great resource. Yeah.
Yeah, if someone needs a second camera or mic stand or a light kit or something, at the last minute we can all help each other out. And we share things like someone says, I need a lawyer or I need advice on copyright. There's always somebody else that knows about it that can share that information.
How many people are involved?
I'm not sure exactly what the number is at right now. I think it's about 50 to 60 around there.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So large enough that it's a big expanse, but small enough that it's not out of control.
And a lot of our members have had a lot of recognition and success too, with films showing on PBS and National Geographic. And we had Ben Shapiro, who did the Gregory Crewdson documentary that was showing at Film Forum recently. So we have a whole range of people doing all kinds of different work, from documentary to experimental to narrative features and dance films, whatever you can think of.
Cool.
So.
Very cool. Yeah, John, do you want to close out by telling us what you're working on now, what we can look forward to in the future?
Well, I just finished a dance film last month, which you can see at dancesmadetoorder.com. It was commissioned for that website for 3 projects representing New York City.
Oh, cool.
So we're very happy with how that all turned out. I was collaborating with Victoria Murphy and Angela Petrinos. So,
what kind of dance? What was the content? What?
It's modern dance, but it's dance that's choreographed for the camera. So it's a different approach to dance and approach to film, and I like working in that medium because it just helps me to think about things in a different way that I can then apply to my narrative works.
Cool.
As well.
And me being a gearhead, I want to ask about your gear. Do you want to spill the secrets on how you shot that, or is that what did you use to do that?
So that was a Canon 1DC shot in a mixture of 4K and 2K.
Oh wow, great.
So that's a great camera, and I highly recommend it. I still was able to use my Nikkor lenses on it, which was great. So that was a combination of Nikkor lenses and L lenses. But I needed that camera for slow motion because I used a lot of slow motion in the piece.
Cool.
And that camera, the 1DC, does 1080p slow motion.
Wow, and
60p.
How did you find your workflow? You shot it on 4K or 2.5?
The scenes that weren't slow motion were in 4K, and the scenes that were slow motion were 2K. So, yeah, a lot of hard drive space.
Right? That's intimidating. Just the size alone of those files is intimidating. But at the end of the day, I've seen that stuff. At the end of the day, it's amazing footage. That's really great.
The tonal range or the dynamic range was just phenomenal. So, very exciting to be able to work in that format. That was my first time.
Cool. Can you tell us the webpage for that one again?
Yes, it's dancesmadetoorder.com.
Dancesmadetoorder.com.
Right.
And also johncoch.com.
.com.
Just johncoch.com. Yeah, that's how that works, right?
Yeah.
Some W's first, and then,
Right.
johncoch.com. Koch.
Yes.
Very cool, man. Well, in the future, when you finish up with that project, please come back on and show us clips of that one.
Okay. Well, that's done, actually. The dance film is done.
Oh, well, we can book something now then. Yeah, very cool.
But I got a couple more features and the irons in the fire. So
yeah, are you working on something specifically right now? That's like the latest. What's the latest thing you're putting your work to?
Well, Billy Fry and I, who wrote Stalemate, are working on a film noir that I'm hoping to shoot in the next couple of months.
Oh, cool.
Hoping to shoot. We're taking the idea that we want to shoot it as quickly and cheaply as possible. So using everything we've got on hand.
Right.
Rather than doing a Kickstarter and waiting a year and trying to raise money.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're just going to work with what we've got and make as much as we can to stay. I think the important thing with any form of creativity is just to keep working. And I don't want finances or anything to stand in the way when I've got a perfectly good camera on hand and
exactly. You got what it takes to make it. So
wonderful collaborators and people to work with. So
very cool.
That's the idea.
Well, I definitely look forward to seeing what else rolls out. So awesome, John. Thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah, very cool.
Cool
awesome.
Stuff.
Woo. Give it up for John. Thanks again, John.
Well done.
So I met John when I was working for a big corporation, and I knew right away, man, this guy knows so much about film, and like every time I would see him, I would bring something up. Oh, this is what I saw this week that was cool.
Yeah.
And week after week, he not only knew everything that I was talking about, but he would always have a good suggestion for me.
Well, that's that thing. It's like you talk to somebody. It's like, how obscure can I get?
Yeah,
and you try
exactly.
more references. They're more and more obscure. And then you're like, oh, okay, you're cool. All right. All right.
Yeah, do you know?
Pass the test.
Yeah.
Do you know Werner Herzog? Well, what about his assistant?
Yeah.
Did you know
Oh,
he
shit,
made
you know
movies too?
this? Yeah, oh, yeah. All right. All right.
Herzog's advice.
See
straight to his
me
assistant.
off the clock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, who's his grip?
Yeah.
Can you answer that?
Jean-Luc Godard's kindergarten films.
I was his grip.
That's what I did.
Cool.
So this is really cool. All of a sudden, I'm looking to my right, and there's all these really great people just joined us. What's up, everybody? How's it going?
Yeah.
Yeah. So audience tonight. This is really awesome. So we're gonna wrap up the show now. We got one major awesome segment ahead of us, and then the closeout, which is gonna be an improvised jam with everybody.
Awesome.
Right now we have Streets of Laredo joining us tonight. There's a musical guest. Yeah, discussion section on Inside the Sulphurbath with Streets of Laredo.
So for those tuning in, you might notice there's an accent.
Hey,
I'm just gonna call that out.
my name is Dave. I'm not from America.
No.
All right. It's a focus group now. Suddenly, I'm like,
Yeah.
my name is Mike, and I'm not from America either.
My name is Mike
California.
W.
Mike W.
I've lived in America my whole life.
Nice. So, yeah, also they got this rock show going on right outside the window, right? I was going to ask you guys, is that cool? I mean, it won't affect the mics or anything, and the folks at home won't notice. But are you guys cool playing against the music that's blaring into the window right now?
It's actually better.
Is it?
It's better because, like, New Zealanders thrive as the underdogs. Like
Nice.
that's our natural game, to be the underdog. So to have competition from the rock and roll show downstairs at the courtyard of Cave, where both myself and Dan have worked,
Yes.
is actually the best case scenario for us.
Awesome. That's great. So cool. So for the folks at home, can you give us a rundown? Can you guys all introduce yourselves and explain how Streets of Laredo came into existence for us?
Sure thing. Thank you, Mike, for asking. So yeah, we're Streets of Laredo. My name is Dave Gibson.
My name is Gibson Dallo.
My name's Daniel Gibson.
And I'm Sarah Gibson.
And we're actually, I'm Dave's little brother.
I was gonna say, do each of you have Gibson in your name?
Yeah, we do.
Tom just puts Gibson in there, but in heart, he is our brother.
Awesome.
So we've got two brothers, husband and wife, and then I'm not part of the family, so they've been trying to force me to change my last name to Gibson, but I'll only do my first name.
But
Well, you got to get the parents to adopt you or something. I think.
But Tom is like the bastard son. Now, and for anyone that watches Game of Thrones, we all know that the bastard son is probably the guy that's going to fucking get shit done. So Tom Darlow is our secret, like, ace up our sleeve, even though he's not technically a Gibson, because he was spawn of some a different genetic material.
Gotcha.
I still haven't been invited to the family Christmas though, which when they first asked me to join, I imagined myself at carving the turkey. But
Were you even here on Christmas?
yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, sorry about
Sitting
that.
alone in his space, like
I
wondering about the band.
I'm sure I invited you. I don't. Do you not get the invite?
You sent it in the post.
Maybe it's in your spam box. Do you check your spam box?
I see.
It might be there because I set it as an e-card with a little cat with a Christmas hat. You know, Christmas hat, the famous Christmas hat. Everyone knows that hat.
Santa's hat, like Santa Claus hat.
Yeah, but it's a Christmas hat that cats specifically wear.
Santa Claus hat on a cat.
Yeah.
Santa Claus hat on a
It
cat.
says Gibson and glitter.
Yeah. Oh, you got the invite, right? You got the invite.
Yeah, he's there.
But you didn't come. Check your spam box.
So, you guys are from New Zealand. How long have you lived in the States now?
We've been here for a bit over a year now. So yeah, we moved away, packed our bags, and yeah, we kind of stumbled across Bushwick. But to be honest, we've got a few other Kiwis that have kind of paved the way, and they've been living here. So we thought, hey, let's join them, and they're all doing their kind of thing, and we just thought, hey, let's just let's just do some music over here and see what happens and have an adventure. Yeah,
awesome.
But I tell you what, the best thing that ever happened to us was finding Bushwick.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like it's quite difficult to stop your life in another country and then start a whole new life. And we definitely all went through a bunch of struggles to figure this stuff out. But moving to Bushwick and the kind of community that we found here, like, made all the difference. And I don't think we'd be here if it wasn't for the friends that we made. And this basically where we are right now, like a 4-block radius. Like the people that we've met here, the musicians, the artists, the filmmakers, and just genuinely good, really good people made us feel at home. And as a result, we kind of feel at home here now, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, cheers to that, man. That's great. Yeah.
And this
This
is true.
is the spot right now. That's really great. I don't know where you guys are from in New Zealand, but is there some space in New Zealand somewhere that you would say is comparable to Bushwick, just how the art scene is and something?
Yeah, totally. So Auckland's a small. We're from Auckland in New Zealand. It's a small town, and then the space that's comparable to Bushwick would be an area known as K Road.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like we used to live there, and it's basically one street. So that's what you get in New Zealand. You get one street,
right?
And but it's a great road, and tons of great bars, tons of great artists, tons of great musicians, and it's also quite cheap to live there because there's tons of prostitutes and what have you hanging out there. It's still like basically a red light district.
It's all on the one street. Anything you need.
Yeah, anything you need. And so that's where we are from in Auckland, and Bushwick, minus the prostitutes. I haven't seen any. It's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen any either. Suddenly I'm just disturbed. Like, oh my God, why haven't we?
I mean, I'm not in the market for one, but I was just like, yeah, I haven't seen many.
I got you.
I think that's because of that previous mayor cleaned up the town, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What was that mayor's the previous mayor?
Giuliani took all the credit for statistical analysis of birthers and abortion, and he's
sent all the homeless guys to San Francisco and all that shit.
No, Giuliani just posing with a mop and him saying, "I did it." That's a whole other show. We'll talk about.
We should talk about that because I want to hear about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because all we hear is the rumors back home, but now we're here, so we're getting the first hand information.
That's right. Yeah. Well, when you're in the heart of it now, all the information in the world is basically made up right here in New York.
In this apartment.
In this apartment.
Yeah. This is
right
the
here
epicenter.
So when did you guys start playing music together? When did the band actually form? You guys playing a long time before the band came around, or?
Yeah, we've all been in previous bands. My brother was in another band in New Zealand, so was I, and we all have. And pretty much it started out of I pretty much walked into Dave's office almost in tears, and I was like, Dave, man, I want to write songs, and you want to write songs. What are we doing? Dave had a business at the time, so he wasn't very happy with that, and I was just kind of floating, and it kind of started. I was a little bit. I needed a bit of direction, and we just thought, right, let's just do it. Let's start writing songs. We had a bunch of ideas, and we just kind of brought them together. We just started workshopping them, and then Dave, do you want to finish off the story?
Yeah, so that's basically it. And
Dave finishes off my sentences. That sweet brother thing.
Dan was miserable, I was miserable, and then we'd both been in these other bands together. I mean, not together, separate bands, but we'd always kind of traded ideas together. We're brothers, and so I'd be like working on a song, I'd be like, what do you think about this, Dan? He would give me some advice or give me some tips, whatever. Same when Dan had these songs, and then kind of our musical styles, I guess, or like our kind of songwriting had kind of changed from these previous bands, and then they kind of I guess they kind of died down, and we kind of got distracted with other things back in New Zealand, and I've been doing a t-shirt business, like a merchandising business, and Dan was just working various jobs, and yeah, he came in and was like, I'm pretty unhappy, and that kind of spawned us actually writing songs together, which was the first time we'd ever done it. And so we made basically a 5-song demo, just 5 songs, and we really liked them, and it felt really, really good. And Then I went on a trip to New York for 2 weeks just to see some friends of mine. And we weren't thinking of moving to New York or anything, but I came over here in 2011, and I was like, why don't we live here? Like, this is, why don't we live here? And so I kind of pitched the idea to my wife over Skype. I was like, hey, Sarah, do you want to move to New York? And she was like, yeah. And then I pitched the idea to Dan, and then like 6 months later, we moved over here. And actually, we only played one show in New Zealand. So we recorded these demos and played one show, and then we're like, well, if we're going to start a band from scratch, why not just start it from scratch in New York?
Wow, that's really cool.
And that's how we got here, and that happened a year ago. Yeah.
What a story. It's almost like the classic Gamble story, but I only feel confident saying that because I've heard you guys' music. I know how fucking awesome you are.
I think, though, as an artist, like, there has to be that point of just letting go and just throwing yourself totally in it.
Yeah.
And, like, for a long time, I really struggled with it. Like, just kind of I had songs, and I'd be in bands, and I'd do other things, and same with Dave. And I think, like, we just went, let's just fully commit to this, and let's just jump in.
And it was a really good way to fully commit to something because it was really difficult. It was actually really expensive. Basically, we sold everything we had and came here with nothing, like all the other great immigrants of New York City. And it feels like a nice story, like a great narrative that we're part of that story now. Like, we're the newest immigrants. New Zealanders aren't a really famous immigrant group in New Zealand, but that's what we are, And there's probably about 100 of us here, so we're smaller numbers, but we're part of that great narrative of people just giving up everything and moving here, for hopes of a better life, or hopes for something better, And it was, like I mentioned before, it was actually really difficult, and it's still difficult, to be honest. It's not like we're macking it or anything, but we all feel like it was the right thing to do. Yeah. And we found ourselves in this great community, which feels like home, which is pretty weird. We're very lucky, to have found ourselves here in Bushwick.
That's great.
And met you guys and stuff,
Yeah.
Mike,
and like this guy, Mike, we just met making him coffee.
Yeah, right?
So...
And talking about music.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I do music and I make films and all this kind of stuff. And we're like, oh, we do music too. And, I think New York City is a great city for that. Mm-hmm. Like, if your eyes are open and, you've got something up your sleeve, the connections that you make, even at a coffee shop, can be really substantial.
Well said,
yeah. We've been really blown away by just the kind of community here, we've been really blown away by the friendships we've made. It's kind of scary moving away from everything you've known and just coming into a complete new kind of place. So you're always kind of like, oh man, are we gonna make? Is it gonna be okay? But the community here is just awesome. It's really blown me away here.
Yeah, that's super cool.
This is the best thing about it is like you'll accidentally have your life changed. Like you always think all the time that you have to like be on your hustle all the time, and you're like, I'm networking, I'm getting fucking shit done, let's do it. But that's not even the case. It's just like you're saying, y'all randomly met each other at a coffee shop, and then all of a sudden we're here, and there's this band playing outside, and they're about to play.
Is this band outside Courtney Love? Is this home?
No, I think it's the PJ
I think
Harvey cover band is what it is.
It's the No-No-Nos.
Yeah.
And,
No-No-Nos,
yeah. But you are actually right. It's weird because at the beginning it sounded like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and now it's kind of like morphing into PJ, and I think it's going to go to this whole territory.
More Janis.
We'll probably end up on Tori Amos at some point.
Yeah,
if
Tori
we're going
Amos.
to complete the circle. But
so from what I hear from you guys, this is a drastic change of subject, but so from what I'm hearing from you guys, so you guys, you don't feel so displaced, right? I mean, you guys feel at home when you're here in Bushwick, and
not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think
because it must be pretty rough. I mean, all you guys do. What you're telling me sounds like intense. Like, could I do that? I don't know if I could do that.
The first 6 months here, I was like freaked out because it had always been my dream to like move to New York, or an equivalent fantastic city, which maybe there's only 3. New York's really up there.
Mm-hmm.
And but when I got here, I was like, "Fuck, I can't do this. Like, this is," and I felt so bummed at myself. Like that, I was like, "I'm out. I'm hanging in there, but like this is, I can't. I think we've all been through that. We're like, this is just too hard. How are we gonna hang in there?" And I felt like, man, most likely I'm going to go back to New Zealand with my tail between my legs.
But that's how everyone feels, though.
Yeah.
Like, that's not that's not unique to anyone who comes from another country, just from another state.
Yeah,
you feel that way, you know. Like,
but I guess I didn't know that, you know, at the time, and I was like, man, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to get a job in a marketing company or something like that, and hate my life for the next 70 years, you know, something like that, you know.
Man, you think you can live to 120?
Yeah.
These days.
Well,
I love that, just the blind optimism.
well, I'm 22 now, Tom. So 70. Yeah.
You have some New York City miles on your face.
Yeah. I got the Bushwick Standard Time age calibration.
You're just an old soul. That's got to be what it is. You're an old soul for 22. Wow.
Well, I mean, but it is
And
true.
you carry your experience with you.
I do think I'm going to live forever. I know I'm not going to, but like, you know, I'm not living like I'm going to die right tomorrow. You know?
I would say
that's a whole nother.
I bet this music could live forever.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like some cheesy
like fame.
shit to say. It's like when you guys were warming up in here, I was like, these guys are amazing. This is
You're
really
like,
great.
this music's going to live forever, for thousands of years. When aliens come to not New Zealand, the world, they're
Aliens
like,
are going straight to New Zealand.
what was this amazing cultural significant event in 2013 in Brooklyn?
And where are these streets? And what is
Just to be
Laredo?
clear, no alien is ever going to go to New Zealand.
All right.
Fuck that. It's too far away from anything.
Well, if they're like the classic like tourist aliens, they're coming to Earth looking for the most beautiful, pristine land or something.
They've got the Lord of the Rings guidebook.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but also they might go to Times Square. You know, it's similar. It depends what kind of aliens you're talking about.
Yeah, that's true.
If they're douchebag aliens, they'll be like, let's go to Times Square. Just do this shit.
I think aliens are gonna land.
This place is amazing.
I think aliens are gonna land one day. It
Douchebag
turns out they're
alien.
all just a bunch of fishermen.
I think,
Earth
I
has
think I
such
saw a
great
couple
oceans with such
douchebag
great
aliens in
fish.
Daytona Beach.
I reckon aliens will go to New Zealand because they just want to get out. They just want to like leave alien world and just relax.
Yeah.
You know? They go to New
Let's
Zealand.
go bungee jumping. Like Earth's gravity is amazing. Oh man. Like that's the big call. We're like, wow, we don't even really feel that shit. So
Aliens.
very cool. Are you guys gonna sit with us and talk a little bit more after the song? Do you want to set up your set at all? You just want to jump up there, or what are you gonna play for us?
Jump up there.
Yeah. Awesome.
What should we play first?
Should we hit long stuff?
Long stuff.
All right, Streets of Laredo. If you guys want to continue just talking for a minute, we're gonna have to switch some mics around.
Yeah, we're setting it
Streets
up.
of Laredo, inside the Sulphurbath, Bushwick, 2013. Streets of Laredo live.
Yeah. Top of the food chain.
Yep, no dead air. No dead air.
None whatsoever. It's funny this afternoon.
Mhm.
I was thinking of something I said one time that was really, really funny.
Mhm.
And I just cracked myself up thinking about it.
Yeah.
I was walking down the street at the time. Saw a business that was closed. It was in like the middle of the week.
Uh-huh.
And I just looked at the sign and looked at the sun. And I was like, oh, that's a shame. I hope they didn't go under. And I just said it like that, like so cavalier that like with the guy's business and his old dreams, you know. And then just today, I was like, "Oh, it's over in the Crescenda." Like it just—I don't know where that came from, but it's
It's kind of David Lee Rothy.
It's just
a little bit.
It's just a funny way to say something.
There used to be this gas station in Louisiana that sold hot sausage. They didn't have this sign that said, "Is it hot?" but with an exclamation mark. And we used to always try to figure out how to say it. Like, "Is it hot? Is it hot? Is it hot? Is it hot?
Is it hot?
Is it hot?" It's impossible.
Is it hot?
And at the same gas station, one time somebody came in and said, "These are some ugly keychains." Which
Who
is
said
like,
this?
it's a beautiful term.
Who said that?
It's kind of my mantra. I don't know, some lady.
Some
She's
ugly
just looking at some. She's like, "These are some ugly keychains."
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who used to work at a mental hospital.
Uh-huh.
And there was a lady there. She had an insult that was so profound. Like, it was just like so arbitrary and crazy. And she goes, "You're looking like a damn sandwich." And it was the amazing, like it was an insult that you would say to somebody, but you'd be so taken aback at the abstractness that you'd be like, "Am I insulted? I'm more interested. Tell me more."
I feel complimented.
How's that bad?
I would always want to be a sandwich.
Well,
if I could pick to be anything, that's it.
Hey guys, I look like a damn sandwich. I'll do it. Ladies and gentlemen, appearing tonight, hearing live on the Inside the Sulphurbath, Streets of Laredo. Take it away.
All right.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4.
stuck in the longest queue. These moments that lead to you. I lost my bag on the long steel line. I pulled my head as I caught the tide. The leaves were falling and through the morning I caught a glimpse of the light. Yes, old man is driving, he's driving redwood. Old man is driving, he's driving redwood. I lost my mind trying to paint my red. The child baptized is my testament. The people keep walking down the streets that I grew up on. I'm living life. Life is true. Old man is driving, he's driving redwood. Old man is driving, he's driving redwood. Mexico, I'm counting on you. Mexico, I'm counting on you. It's true. Old man is driving, he's driving redwood. Oh, the old man is driving, he's driving redwood. Mexico, I'm counting on you. 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 I lost my bag. I'm standing in a room with people I don't know. Don't care about nothing.
Hey, Streets of Laredo, I'm gonna count it in. Are you all ready?
Why don't you come home and talk to me anymore? When you get home, the first thing is you shut that door. Way I know is through the look in your eyes. You can't close those curtains even if you try. Way it goes. I found the road in the dust to Laredo. Orchards were the worst hit from the drought. The rations and the water tanks were almost out. Rain came down on the town just before everything living it dried out. Way it goes. I found the road in the dust to I caught the wind off the boats of my fathers. I found gold in the tunnels of New York. The whole town shut down early for the annual fair. The children spend their money and the farmers traded for the year. Sounds of the people in the summer haze. This old town keeps rolling as the music plays. Way it goes. I found the road in the dust to Laredo. I caught the wind off the boats of my fathers. I found gold in the tunnels of New York. I got the call from the heart of my mother. Way it goes. Way I found the road in the dust to Laredo.
That's awesome. Well done.
Yes, that was a song called Longsdale.
Laredo.
Yeah, Laredo.
That song's called Laredo.
So we've got a bunch of songs that begin with L. Longsdale, Laredo, De Laron, which technically starts with D, but still, for me, it's got an L kind of vibe.
We wanted in the future when people are playing categories to just have song names when you roll an L covered, just like.
That's what we're trying to do. Cover
That's
it.
what we want.
Has it Dan maybe I thought we could play maybe Hey Rose right now?
Yeah, Hey Rose.
Yeah?
I like that.
This is a song that Dan wrote about his beautiful girlfriend, whose name is not Rose. But it's like
She's
a
like
little,
a rose.
you know,
It's a little confusing.
It's a little nickname.
Hey Rose, you remember when we made that call to the Sulphurbath station? Just who the hell do you think you are? From a horse and hound, not so far from Eden town. I was outside sound, yeah, I've been seeing stars, trying to play my natural game. I'm waiting for the wind to change. I'm hoping, Rose, that you do feel the same. Hey, Rose, you know I'm giving you my best shot. Well, I don't know if my butterflies are lonesome. I've been playing with the sound of a symphony. You and me walking clean downtown. I was lost outside sound, yeah, I've been seeing stars, trying to play my natural game. I'm waiting for the wind to change. I'm hoping, Rose, that you feel the same. Turn up, 25. Hey Rose, oh we just friends, well I don't know, well I guess it depends, stepping out from on my balcony. We got time to make things right. Feels good to me, cause I've been seeing the stars, trying to play my natural game. I'm waiting for the wind to change. I'm hoping, Rose, that you feel the same. Thank you, everybody. Man, that was awesome. There was a bit of a hoedown happening in the studio. That was rad. I never thought that would happen, a hoedown in a studio.
It's the first time for everything.
What do we got? Another L song.
This is our last song, actually.
It's called Girlfriend. We actually released this a little while ago. It was our first single.
It's our only single.
Yeah.
Currently.
The only single.
Yeah.
That's what makes it a single.
Yeah.
Well, we got a double EP coming out, so
and a double.
Pretty excited.
We got
Do
an
I
EP.
smell triple next?
We got an EP coming out that's going to be followed very swiftly by another EP, and it's going to be coming out in about 6 weeks actually. So we went back to New Zealand. We recorded a bunch of songs, 9 songs in fact. And so the first one of those EPs will be out in about 4 to 6 weeks. So keep an eye out for us on the interweb.
What's the webpage?
Go to our Facebook, facebook.com, Streets of Laredo. You can do subtitles under that, maybe. Oh no, you can't. This is live, right? So it's too late. Streets of Laredo, like the place in Texas, and also in Mexico.
Girlfriend.
Hey, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Great show. Thanks, Mike.
Streets of Laredo. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, she's 21, trying to have some fun. Everybody around thinks she's a baby. 2 by wire, drinking on paper. She's my girlfriend. Oh, he's 25, trying to stay alive, trying to pay rent, trying to survive. No dollars in my pocket, yeah, I'm losing my mind, yeah, I'm trying to pay rent. She's my girlfriend, I'm trying to pay my rent. Oh, she's 21, trying to have some fun. Everybody around thinks she's a baby. 2 by 1, yeah, drinking on paper. She's drinking whiskey, I'm on the water. I'm taking notice, I'm just a boarder. She's my girlfriend, yeah. She's I'm the one complaining, trying to make some money so I can see the lady. Statue of Liberty, what you gonna get to me? She's my girlfriend, yeah. She's my girlfriend, I'm on the sideline. She's in the moment, moment by moment. Summer thunder variant, letters from the government. Robbing hearts and breaking banks, breaking rules and turning heads. She's my girlfriend, I'm on the pavement. It's just a weekend, I'm trying to pay my rent.
Thanks, these guys.
Thank you for having us. It's been great to be here, and it's a massive pop shield.
Yeah, right. It's inappropriate, actually.
It's a massive pop shield. It's huge.
Right.
It's engulfing my face. But yeah, thanks for having us. We'll see you around.
That was really great. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna put on the archives. I really encourage everybody at home, check out the archives, get the links, check out Streets of Laredo. We're really looking forward to hearing you guys play some more. You got a live show coming up, or?
Yeah, we're playing actually in Boston on Tuesday for the Waterfront Arts Festival get-together meeting of the people of 2013. It's not the exact name, but if you're in Boston, you'll know it. It's on Tuesday. Yeah. We'll be playing there, and then maybe in Montauk a week later, but we haven't heard back from them yet. So, and then Spike Hill on the 13th of September. I know you're going to all run that date down because it's like 7 months away, so make sure you do that.
I got to say, you guys' harmonies and the stuff that you're pulling together here, you're like pulling for so much classic like folk stuff, but the sound that you guys create, the rhythmic dynamic you guys have, it's great to dance to. I love what you guys are doing. It's really amazing. Yeah,
thanks.
Super cool.
I like it if people dance to our shit. That'd be good.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I've just been sitting on your couch, and now I'm covered in glitter. Care to explain?
Kind of an uncomfortable moment to bring that up. I was hanging out on your couch, suddenly there's glitter all over me. I don't know who's responsible for the glitter here. There's a lot of people come in and out, and some of them have glitter.
Okay. Mike's a secret glam rocker.
That's all I can say. Yeah.
Mike's like, he didn't want to make a big deal about it, but
specifically said we're coming out.
Yeah, I'm a little self-conscious.
Are we gonna jam?
Yep. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's get it up.
Play that drum kit?
Please. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody can jump on any instruments they want. We can say goodbye. Thank you guys so much for joining us for episode 9.
Yeah, 9.
This was a really good one. We're going to end with a jam right now.
Yeah.
I want to thank Kavitha Rajagopalan. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kavitha, for being here. Check out the links on the show. Check out all the guests tonight. John Koch, filmmaker. Thank you so much, John, for being on. It was a really great segment. We want to see more of your film stuff. And Streets of Laredo. Thank you guys so much. We're going to say goodbye with a little jam. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
If you see something that's musical, pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. Pick it up.
All right, this is called the D note song.
Genius.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say something. Yo, it's been a long time coming. Streets of Laredo, Sulphurbath Productions. It's been about community, family, and peace. It's about what you are. It's about what you believe. Yeah. And sometimes it's about the way you go. See, there's a road less traveled, and if you choose it, and if you prove it, it doesn't matter if you lose it, because it'll always be found. Everybody knows feet on solid ground. We're surrounded by God's energy. There's a part of us that's a part of us all. There's the universe, and there's the individual, a part of what begins and what ends. So I don't really think about my sins, because my truths and my beliefs, they're forever. So maybe I'm clever, or maybe I'm just another star in the equilibrium that has become my homeostasis. Maybe it's about practice. Maybe it's about living more than just your name. Maybe it's about more than just fame. Maybe it's more than just a brand. Maybe it's more about where you stand but where you'll land. Maybe it's about lines that are drawn in the sand that will last forever. But I don't think it's about being clever. Because right now I feel like it's now or never. And never is not an option. So what can stop him when he feels that God guides him forever? Because I don't think it's about being clever. I don't think it's about being clever. I think it's about solutions. I think it's about figuring out ways to stop pollution. I think it's about ways of letting the swim of the fish continue. And I think it's about how we do what we've always been doing, just doing it with more love. And I don't even think we have to look up, because right now, I'm looking at the ground. Yeah, and this is how it's gonna go down. This, that. Dope sound. Yeah. And I'm surrounded by God's energy, yeah. And maybe I don't believe, but I believe in me. And I'm a true MC, so this is what I'll be forever, ever, and ever, and ever, and ever, and ever, and ever. It'll get better, and when it gets better, I might sever my neck from my head just to let it float into the universe. Maybe I'll be dead or keep living. And every day I feel like it's Thanksgiving, so we don't gotta curve a turkey. Yeah, I feel like the world has never hurt me, because all my trespasses and all my ends have opened doors, and I've skated across the floor, and I've been absorbed by the Lord. And if he wasn't my master, he should have been, because then he could have stopped me from doing the impossible. Because all I see are obstacles, but I'm not stopped, because I protrude like the glass that I've seen through, the multiple faceted windows and the different diamond cuts that I peered through, and the different emerald diamonds and blue and pinks and purples and reds. I don't care about black and white. What does that mean to me? I'm a true MC, surrounded by energy. Yeah, and here I stand. I remember the day I first heard Gillespie. And then after that, Charlie Parker, Max Roach. I smoked the roots, and I used to think that weed was a poison, but now I'ma let God's voice in and let him spin and 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 spin, yeah, and spin, yeah, and spin, yeah, and spin, and spin, and spin, and spin, like the world on its axis, yeah. Some people might say that this is just practice for the war, the revolution. But I don't think we should choose guns. We should choose guitars and drums. Yeah, until it's done. And I pray for Trayvon Martin, but I also pray for George Zimmerman. And I don't want this beef to simmer, man, because my block's been hot for generations. And my people been running, and they've been starving. And I've been like, yo, here I am, cathartic God looking in my eyes, and I'ma try to do what I do until I die. And God will let me reach the sky, and then I'ma be like, this is how I get by when I'm hearing the rhymes, and I'm hearing the drums, I'm hearing the run, I'm hearing the sun. How do I hear the sun? Well, how do I smell red and blue? They smell like you and me and you, and they taste like the truth. To all my Kiwis, Bushwick and worldwide. They taught me that smiles happen across the world. It don't matter your politics or your political affiliations, because ultimately my passport says one nation.